Come on, living stone. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, living stone.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, living stone.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, living stone. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football, and proudly sponsored by Starna Apparel. My name's Euan and today I'm joined by Angus. Angus, how you doing, mate? Good weekend?
Yeah, not too bad. Back playing for the supporters team. We got another good victory on the road away to Queen's Park. You know, a team who's been a bit of a bogey team for us in the last kind of couple of years and all of that. Good solid 3-0 win. So, you know, that got the weekend off to a good start. But unfortunately,
A goal for yourself as well, I believe.
a goal, of course, that's just the usual. Yeah, I don't really like to bring that up, to be honest. But yeah, a good start to the weekend. But unfortunately, you know, two teams that we follow were unable to replicate it. Although I will say that there were some good signs from both showings. So yeah, solid enough weekend. What about yourself?
Yeah, good enough weekend. A lot of kind of, I mentioned on the previous podcast, we're in the process of kind of getting ready to move house here. So there's been a lot of kind of packing and tidying and things like that over the weekend. It was good to see, obviously, you guys winning a game against a team from the West over the weekend, as the men's team and the women's team weren't quite as successful. But yeah, decent weekend all in. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick things off by looking back at our trip to Ibrox, as despite a spirited performance from the Lions, Rangers would run out comfortable winners in the end.
Our women's side made their SWPL2 debut this weekend, but it would end in defeat for the Lionesses. We'll discuss the talking points from the game against Kilmarnock.
And finally, it's a break from Premiership action as the Lions look to progress to the quarter-finals of the League Cup when they host Ayr United. The Lions made the trip to Govan, hoping to cause an upset against Champions League chasing Rangers. Despite a competitive performance, a flurry of late goals from the host would see Livy fall to a 4-0 defeat. Ewan, do you think 4-0 is a bit of a harsh scoreline?
Yeah, I was saying this to you at the game, Angus. It wasn't a 4-0 game, in my opinion, and certainly some Rangers fans that I've spoken to since the game as well kind of echoed that thought. I think the highlights almost do us a little bit dirty at times, because I think we did have Rangers a little bit rattled for a spell, certainly in the second half, but it took us a little bit of time to get composed in the game. We kind of had a little scare where Dessers has rounded Shamal George and Luigi De Lucas is cleared off the line. However, I think that was given offside in the end, and Rangers got that early goal, which is, it's always you put yourself in a really difficult position, I feel, once you concede an early goal at Celtic Park or Ibrox, because you're stuck in that position whether to try and keep it tight and try and nick an equaliser later on, or do you try and go for an equaliser and leave yourself open to the inevitable kind of, that could rack up to 3, 4, 5, 6 quite quickly if you try and go with that mentality. But the goal's really poor from our point of view. Lammers has tucked it away really well, but in the build-up, Sangari's been turned by Cantwell. Cantwell kind of leaves a little dummy for the 1-2. Sangari then just doesn't track there on a Cantwell afterwards, and then he's actually very static in the box, and Lammers has ran past him to go and knock it into the top corner. So Sangari didn't cover himself in glory in the first half, which wasn't a big surprise when he came off at half time, to be honest. But then they had the disallowed goal as well, rightly chopped off for handball in the end. Having seen the replays, it was quite strange that the referee wasn't sent to the monitor to look at it. It must have been that clear and obvious that they didn't feel they had to consult the referee on it. But I feel like that disallowed goal almost woke us up a little bit, and we started to settle into the game from then on. We had some decent passages of possession. I think it's the most possession I've seen us have at Ibrox, or from memory, for some time. I think it was in the kind of 33, 35 kind of percent that we had of the ball at the weekend. And we settled in. We had a few opportunities to counter, but it was just that final ball. And I was saying this during the game, these opportunities where it's that ball to get the ball wide, that's a chance almost for us at Ibrox to put a little bit of pressure on them. And it was just, as I say, that final pass when you were breaking into the Rangers half just wasn't quite there. And second half, as I say, I think we'd kind of settled into the game at this point, and we were starting to cause Rangers a few problems. And a couple of kind of opportunities we had in quick succession both came and fell to Andrew Shinnie. First one's broke to him at the edge of the box. It's taken a deflection. Butland's managed to tip it out to his right hand side, and then there was another one where Shinnie's dispossessed Dessers, corner of the box, and he's had a really good strike, and it's a really good save. We were right behind that one. It's a cracking save by Jack Butland down to his left hand side. And we had another couple of kind of half chances. In particular, we seemed to be causing Rangers a few problems down our right hand side, and that coincided with Mikey Devlin switching with DeLucas in the second half. Devlin seemed to struggle on the left hand side of that back three, as complimentary as we were in the Aberdeen game for his performance. I think he struggled with kind of the pace of Cantwell breaking beyond him at times. And as I said, the managers obviously decided to make that switch, and Devlin and Brandon were certainly a good out ball for us in that second half. And Mikey Devlin put in a couple of decent crosses. Curtis Guthrie almost got in the end of one. And albeit Rangers still had their opportunities, Dessers had an opportunity where Obolai's made a fantastic block. Danilo's had a chance he probably should do better with. I think Sima had a 1v1 that Shamal George has made, kind of one of the rare saves I feel he had to make during the game. But you could start to tell just before that second Rangers goal, we were starting to get a little bit leggy. I think a really good example of that was when Rangers broke down our left-hand side and Christian Montano looked like he was really struggling to get back in. And it's unfortunate, as a wing back, it's probably one of the most difficult positions to play in terms of the amount of running you have to do back and forth. And I think that kind of told as the game was getting to the latter stages. And the goal, again, it's just quite poor. Obolai looks like he's kind of caught under the ball, and Danilo's headed it into the corner, and then 2 becomes 3 very quickly. The third goal's just sloppy. It's just really sloppy defending. Nobody kind of takes charge and just clears their lines. And it's broke to Sima, who's managed to kind of poke it into the net. And then I think the fourth goal just tells you how dead on our feet we were. It's one quick little flick by Kieran Dowell, and he's taken Shinnie and Holt out the game, albeit it's a fantastic finish, to be fair to Dowell, in the end, and it's a really good move by Rangers. I think their subs made quite the impact in terms of stretching the game. Matondo in particular, with his pace, was causing us a few problems when he came on. But again, we had a couple of half chances as the game wore on. Crosses into the box. James Penrice got down the outside when he came on, and it's a good collect by Jack Butland. But yeah, I feel at 1-0 in the second half, I felt we did have Rangers a little bit rattled. You could sense the Ibrox crowd was a bit disgruntled. We were dispossessing them in areas of the park. They were slack with their passes, and I feel for, I would say, an hour of that game, I thought we were really, really good, and I thought it was as good a performance as you could have away at the Old Firm for the best part of an hour. Take out the last 15 minutes and the first 15 minutes of the game. So I think there are a lot of positives to take from it. It's just disappointing that, I think a 2-0 scoreline probably would have been a fair reflection on the game. But it's just disappointing that we've conceded a couple of really sloppy goals in there, given how so far this season we've been really good defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird coming away from that kind of game, 4-0, but then still having these kind of positive kind of feelings regarding the performance. I think when you can see the goal at Ibrox or Parkhead that early, you're kind of expecting the floodgates to open to keep that at bay for the best part of another kind of like 70 odd minutes or so. Up until the 80th minute, that's when it started kind of crumbling down. But yeah, as you say, in terms of we always get kind of lambasted for putting every man behind the ball and stuff like that. Not really seen too many people kind of talking about that. I think because we definitely did have a little bit more of a go. I think it's funny you did say there we had like possession about 35% and all of that, which is probably double as to what we probably would normally have there. But yeah, definitely had their own wee input into the game. Good couple of chances. That block by John Suter into Guthrie's probably the biggest chance we probably have. Butland's made a good save from Shinnie as well. Pleasing to see us, battling back in that kind of way, seeing that we're one goal down and, kind of taking it to them. As you said, I think, legs started to tire and that as well. But plenty to kind of look forward from that. I think, if we play like that in a number of games against a number of other teams, for example, if that's the kind of performance that we take to, to Tynecastle, to Easter Rose, Pittodrie or that, I think you're looking at that as the kind of thing you could maybe sneak a point in that. And I think you've just kind of got to hold your hands up and say, I mean, you look at the subs that Rangers bring on, how many £1 million players have just came off the bench and whatnot. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to be kind of happy about there. To speak about Rangers for a second though, Ewan, I've seen a lot of like their kind of fans so interestingly saying, oh, that's much more like it from us and whatnot. I think that for 80 minutes, they were pretty average in all honesty. I don't think that they were very, very great at all. I don't know if it's a mixture of their new signings or still trying to gel, but they were so wasteful on the ball. And I think that wasn't really down to us being, so having so many bodies at the back. I think it was just the fact that they were just lacking quality. And I just don't see them being that great a team. I think that there is going to be sides who are going to go to Ibrox this year and will take points off of them because I think that there is weaknesses in there. I think that the slackness of their attacking play will open them up. And I think, the likes of if you're an Aberdeen, I watched the Aberdeen game against Celtic yesterday. If you're Aberdeen and you're going to be playing Rangers, I'd be fancying your chances to get at them because, defensively, there will be gaps and up front, they're not quite clicking yet either. So I think that they're going to be an interesting team to watch for the rest of the season because, as you say, in that game on Saturday, you could feel the tension of the supporters and getting on Beale's back. That'll happen very, very quickly again, if they don't go and start beating teams more convincingly.
Yeah, it's amazing how a scoreline can kind of mask certain things. And I mentioned there how if you were at the game and kind of saw the full 90 minutes, it wasn't a 4-0 game. But you'll have casual Rangers fans who will be sitting on Twitter, seeing the score come in and go, that's much more like it, comfortable win over Livingston. And that's the reason why nobody's talking about us sitting behind the ball and try to soak up pressure and things like that because they've got a comfortable win. It's not been a scraped 1-0 victory or anything like that. And it's taken a late goal to kind of seal it. But, there's so many games kind of we've had at Ibrox since promotion that have fallen into that kind of bracket. I remember our first season, we conceded early on. It took until the 75th, 80th minute, and then they scored a couple of quick goals late on. There's been 3 or 4 games I can think of at Ibrox that have been very similar. We've been well in the game for long periods of it, and then we've just conceded late on, and it's looked a lot more comfortable than it probably actually was in the end. But I agree with you in kind of what you're saying about Rangers as well. I think they aren't quite clicking in it, albeit we spoke about it in the preview with Michael Bealey. He's now going to be getting judged now because this is his own group of players. But to kind of get back onto ourselves, the lineup, couple of changes in there. There was no Scott Pittman in the squad. He mentioned that I think had an issue with his ribs. No Bruce Anderson. Saw Stephen Kelly come in. He was one that we kind of mentioned in the preview, might come in to play behind Newbley. That's how it worked out. What did you make of that kind of starting 11?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week and essentially kind of called it, to be fair. And I think that's what you're expecting. The toss-up was essentially who came in for Guthrie as like the number midfielder. Perhaps that would have been Pittman if Pittman wasn't, injured. But I do think that Stephen Kelly did have a solid enough game there. He's good on the ball, helped us kind of get up the pitch and whatnot as well. But no real qualms about it. I think, the team who played against Aberdeen deserved to, kind of hold their positions there. think Guthrie's just unfortunate that you're going to Rangers and you want to be compact early on, so you don't leave two up front. No real kind of issues with it at all. I think maybe the substitutions as well. I think we're maybe a little bit short in the midfield because of missing links of Pittman. I think he brought in Dan Mackay to come in and be one of those centre midfielders who's probably more of an attacking winger than a player who's going to have to be doing a bit more defensive work as a centre midfielder or as a defensive midfielder or whatever. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, there's only so much we can kind of do. I think we got to see the first glimpse of Michael Nottingham as well coming on at right wing back. I think that there was a couple of interesting bombs forward from him, and I think that we get to see that he's got a long throw as well. How exciting is that?
We all know that Livingston fans love a long throw. But we mentioned about us being the bastards again of the Scottish Premiership and being absolute hammer throwers. And if it means we've got the long throw back off the Alan Lithgow and Kieran Brown days, I am absolutely all for it. So Michael Nottingham, keep practicing that long throw. I am absolutely all for you bringing that back to Livingston FC. But you kind of mentioned Stephen Kelly there. Just a little anecdote I saw on Twitter yesterday, which I kind of retweeted from the podcast account. How obviously Rangers fans are the biggest compliment they could give Stephen Kelly was that they assumed that he used to play for Celtic with his performance at the weekend. One in particular Rangers account on a forum seemed to question Stephen Kelly's incentive for playing so well at Ibrox must be that he was on the books at Celtic at some point, and then somebody screenshotted the fact that he was on the books at Rangers. So yes, all very interesting. So a big compliment to Stephen Kelly from the Rangers support that they forgot that he even played for them and they could have only ever played for Celtic to justify a good performance against them.
I've just got that up there and that is wild. How could somebody say obviously an ex-Celtic? That is, people are wild, man.
Right.
Like as if it's like a terrible thing. Like how dare they play well against us? Must be an undercover agent from Celtic.
Yeah,
sure.
It's a little known fact that Joe Nubley actually once had a Celtic scarf as well last season, so that justifies why he scored a couple of goals against them last year. But no, I think kind of on the game itself, our season's not going to be based off of games going away at Celtic Park and Ibrox in particular. We're not expected to go there and get anything, but there was so much that I thought was encouraging about the performance and a 4-0 defeat, which is quite bizarre to think of. But I felt for, as I say, an hour of that game, I thought we were well in it, very competitive. And I think we need to try and focus on those positives. Obviously, a couple of the goals that we conceded were sloppy, but I think you can almost forgive it a little bit in the fact that we put so much into the game in terms of when you go to these grounds, you're chasing the ball for large spells of it. And I don't think folk appreciate how much concentration is required in a game at Celtic Park and Ibrox to try and keep things tight, and the amount of balls into your box you need to deal with. It's energy sapping, needing to focus that much for that period of time. And as I say, I'm not overly disappointed with the result of the weekend. Obviously, I'm disappointed we've lost the game of football, but I felt there was plenty of positives to take from it. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Strana for sponsoring Talk Livi.
Our women's side made history this weekend when they faced Kilmarnock in their SWPL2 debut. Despite taking the lead through Jess Murphy, Kilmarnock were clinical and secured a 4-1 victory at the Tony Macaroni Arena. And guess you were able to take in the game. You were obviously doing the Twitter updates for the women's side as well. How do you think we fared on our SWPL2 debut?
Quite weirdly, in a lot of ways, quite similar to how the men's team got on this weekend, Euan. Pretty good all round, and then just kind of a late flurry of goals has kind of dampened the spirits, essentially, I would say. Yeah, kind of going into the game, I think it was quite exciting, new step up to a new league, a new challenge and that. And I think somebody said that Kilmarnock are the longest running women's team, in Scotland or something like that. So, good test to start off the kind of campaign against. And, for ourselves as well, new manager, new players and stuff like that as well. Just a kind of exciting time. I think going into the game, we've been used to playing the 3-5-2, and I think, having speaking to Mike and all of that, I think he likes a 4-3-3 as well. I think with the players and that, having the option to do both. So I think it was interesting to see what would happen there. The game started off, it was very, very competitive. Both teams were kind of trying to feel each other out. Fortunately, we were able to take the lead. Corner from Beth Mackay, I think Lucy Brown almost goes to flick it on, and it just goes over. And I have this on record, Ewan, that although Jess Murphy apparently scored, she claims to have not scored, not touched the ball. But I was supposed to keep that down on the down low. But here we are. I think
so. Jess has just been called out on the podcast now.
Exactly. I think if you see one of the photos from the game, you can see her kind of hesitantly looking at the camera as everybody's celebrating around her, as if it's like that advert. Do you remember when it's like the fraud one, and she's like, "Oh, did you see what I did there?" And it just goes all serious like instantly. That's kind of like, yeah. I think we were threatening quite well. I think we were getting down the lines quite well. I think Beth Mackay had a good game on the left hand side, buzzing about. I think that the midfield. We had Courtney McAvoy there, who ended up getting player of the match, and I was really, really impressed by her performance. I thought she was energetic, combative, looking to get on the ball, trying to get forward whenever she could, whilst helping out defensively as well. Kilmarnock would claw a goal back with a really tremendous finish. I think it's the lassie Dion Brown, who's apparently played at good levels for quite a while. Is quite a well-known player in the Women's League, and it's a delightful dink over the goalkeeper Molly Reeve. And going into half time, 1-1, I think, in all honesty, I think in the first half we probably edged it in the terms of chances. I think that Kilmarnock only really created that one, whereas, we were trying to bomb forward and, causing a couple of issues there. But at the second half, though, I think Kilmarnock did turn it on a little bit more, and I think that there was maybe a little bit of more cohesion for the Kilmarnock team, perhaps. Maybe, I think, with us trying to still combine all these kind of new signings and stuff like that, and I think that fitness also played a little bit of a part in the end. Kilmarnock maybe managed the game a little bit better in that kind of term, exploiting the spaces and stuff like that. I think that we started to tire, and they started to make use of certain areas of the park. The second goal comes, it's a really good finish from the edge of the box. I think Lassie Robinson just picks up and essentially just fires it into the top corner. They then bring on a left winger who had a little bit of pace and is able to beat us to a cross for the third goal, and then fourth one's just a simple counter attack, honestly, over the top, and it's a great finish from her to make it 4-1. But again, I think looking at that, the kind of late flurry of goals makes it seem like it was a less closer game than it actually was. I think that we were very much in it for even up until like 3-1, and that fourth one's probably knocked the stuffing out of us a little bit. But yeah, in terms of the performance, I think that for the most part, we did give a good account of ourselves. I think we have just kind of maybe had a bit of a reality check or something like that. Not that they would have been, not that we would have been complacent or thinking above ourselves or anything like that. It's just that knowing that, if you're going to give teams in this league these opportunities, they have the quality who is going to punish them. And that essentially is what's happened there, because, Kilmarnock didn't create too many more saves, too many more chances that forced our goalkeeper into many saves or that. It's just when the opportunities did come, they've been able to take them and punish us quite drastically. Yeah,
you mentioned that about a lot of new arrivals. Mike obviously talks about that in the interview that you did with him during the week, so I encourage anyone to, if they want a bit more background to Mike's kind of path to Livingston and also kind of his summer recruitment, I would encourage you to listen to that as well. Very good in-depth interview with Angus. But Yeah, you mentioned kind of about new arrivals. I think there's 4 new signings in there, a goalkeeper that's only just arrived as well. And it's probably a position you want pretty settled as a goalkeeper and playing in behind a back 3 or back 4. And so there's a lot of kind of a new feel about Livi, despite the fact we've obviously come up from the Championship there, winning the league. So there's a settling in period in this league, and it is a big jump up as well, playing SWPL too. Very big jump up, and you're playing, as you mentioned, a kind of experienced women's setup in Kilmarnock, who, as you mentioned, they are the oldest kind of running women's side in Scottish football. So it was always going to be a big test, but I think the encouraging points you need to take from it are the fact that the girls were so competitive in the game. Despite the scoreline, it's probably, again, kind of masks what the actual game was like, and that the girls gave probably as good as they got. It was just that kind of clinical edge that Kilmarnock had in the final third that saw the girls kind of fall to that defeat. But what did you make of the new arrivals? You mentioned Courtney McAvoy there. There was another few debutants, Molly Reeve goals. I think Hannah Davey played during the game as well. What was your thoughts on the new arrivals?
Yeah, solid enough. I think that for Molly, unfortunate that you've came up against a team who has been so clinical there. I think that, the back line gave her decent enough protection as well. I think Jess and Tash, did really, really well, as they always do, essentially. But yeah, into the midfield, I think Courtney McAvoy and Hannah Davey. I think just for they two, the ability to get on the ball and, pluck it out the air, knock it between them, wee 1-2s and stuff like that. You can see the quality that they two players definitely have, and I was really impressed with the two of them. Maybe the surprise that kind of happened that, they were joined by Fiona Walker in the middle of the park. I think that having seen the pre-season games and stuff like that, I hadn't seen any of that kind of tried out of that, so it came as a bit of a surprise there. Fee's always kind of played as predominantly a centre back or a left back, so even like that will be, if that's the plans for going forward, there may be a bit of a bedding issue, bedding of time, waiting for, to kind of get used to kind of playing that role, because it is a difficult kind of position to play. I would say that did come as a bit of a surprise though, considering the amount of kind of central options that we do have over the park and within the midfield and that as well. Another new arrival in the park was Bryony Ross, who was playing at left back, and I think as well, solid enough. I think, played well with linking up with Beth on that left-hand side. But yeah, I think that, for that being their first competitive game, still kind of getting used to one another, I think that there is always going to be those kind of little tweaks in that could be improved on. And I think that from seeing what they do in the training, the work in that, I've got no doubt in my mind that, come tonight, Tuesday night and Thursday night, that they're going to be working on things to try and solve some of the teething issues and, bounce back with a good performance on Sunday against Glasgow.
Yeah, you mentioned that there. They're playing Glasgow Women's on Sunday, and they've just been relegated from SWPL, so I'm sure it'll be another tough test, albeit Glasgow Women struggled a lot in their debut season in the top flight, but I'm sure it'll be a test nonetheless for the girls. But for anyone that's at a loose end on Sunday, try and get yourselves along to support the girls. As I say, it's a massive season for them, making their debut in SWPL too, and I think any support that you can give the girls would be massively appreciated by Mike and the team.
Yeah, for sure. I think we'll have the details for that as soon as we can, so keep an eye out on the social medias. I'll just put a wee plug in there to keep on following what we're up to. But yeah, I think there is a lot to kind of look into it in a positive light for them. First game of the season, I guess there will be disappointment that, kind of going down and, that kind of similar manner to what the men's team did. But plenty of games to kind of rectify that for. And, I think it was just good as well to see quite a decent amount of people turn up to show some support to the women's team. Having speaking to quite a few who taken it in for the first time, they seem to be pretty impressed by the way that we were playing, especially in that first half. So yeah, hopefully that encourages some people to come down more often, because it's going to be a good season, I think. Although this has been a little bit of a setback, it's all about how you respond from it, and I'm confident that we will do exactly that. It's a break from Premiership action as the Lions look to book their place in the quarterfinals of the League Cup when Ayr United visit West Lothian this weekend. Euan, us against lower league opposition in a later stage of a cup. What are your thoughts for this?
Yeah, I think anyone that thinks this tie is a foregone conclusion just needs to look back at a certain game in February when we came up against Inverness at the Tony Mac in the Scottish Cup last 16, and Inverness certainly humbled us, in particular in the second half of that game, running out comfortable 3-0 victory and ended up reaching the Scottish Cup final as well. So yes, it's a banana skin tie. However, if you look at the draw, if you could have got any of the seeded teams, I think that's probably the tie that most of the unseeded clubs would have been looking for, was Ayr United, and the fact we've got a home tie from it as well is good. So it's going to be an absolute banana skin. Or I don't know why there's certain clubs who I always kind of associate with being good cup teams, and Ayr United are one of those. Like, my dad was a boyhood Ayr United team, and I actually remember going to watch them in a League Cup final against Rangers with my dad years and years ago. I think maybe 2002, 2003. So yeah, I always associate Ayr United with being a decent cup side, and we've fallen foul of them in cup competitions before. Certainly in the Scottish Cup, we've lost a couple of ties to them. So yeah, it's a tie that we need to be very, very wary of. They topped their group with 11 points, won 3, including the victory over St Johnstone at McDermott Park. So they've already taken a Premiership scalp so far in this League Cup campaign, and they've kind of had a iffy start, I would say, to the Championship. Lost their opening game of the season away at Capello, 3-1 to Greenock Morton, Dougie Imrie's Greenock Morton, and then they won at the weekend there against Inverness. And certainly in the comments online, it wasn't maybe a game for the purist, but as I say, a couple of players recognise names that we would need to be very wary of, the likes of Jamie Murphy, who they signed in the summer there from St Johnstone, and a certain Aidan McGeady as well, which is a bit of a coup for signing at Championship level in Scotland. But I believe he's doing the Stevie Naismith role on top of that as a technical director. But I think he's actually a technical director rather than Stephen Naismith's role as technical director. But yeah, they're certainly two players that you're going to need to be very wary of, albeit in their advanced years in their career, but certainly two players that could cause us a few problems. Another player maybe to keep an eye out for is Akeem Rose, who actually played as a trialist for ourselves earlier in the season against Alloa. He signed from kind of lower league opposition down south, so he plays up top for them. But yeah, it's going to be an intriguing tie. I think Ayr United would have probably looked at the unseeded teams and maybe fancied themselves to come and play us and cause a bit of an upset. But yeah, I think we've done enough so far this season I feel confident enough in that we can be solid and defensively sound. It's whether we can go and break Ayr United down. We've kind of seen this in the League Cup ties already this season when we've played lower league opposition. The onus comes on ourselves probably as favourites for the tie, and it's a case of whether we can take the lead in the game. I think if we can go in front early doors, it totally changes the complexion of the tie, and it puts the onus on Ayr United a little bit more to try and come out a little bit. So I think we need to try and, in the first half hour, say, probably try and get in front in the game. And I think that'll start to open it up for ourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's been the story for most of our games against these kind of lower league teams, and we've looked a bit maybe even poor, not the most encouraging, because we've been struggling to break teams down. That Brechin game at the start of the season, it kind of was like a glorified friendly with the kind of tempo it was being played at. The Hamilton game, wasn't very inspiring, to be honest. And then obviously you had like the second half of the Cove game, which was definitely a lot more like it, even though the first half was maybe a little bit more of the same. And then that final game against Clyde and all. So yeah, hopefully we've got to. I think that these are the kind of games that we're going to have to start the game off at the right tempo. Try and get at them, try and make them, worry playing against us and all of that, rather than it being a bit too comfortable, rather than just playing right in front of them and allowing them to soak up any sort of pressure. But again, we should be solid enough to take on a team like this who, are probably going to be mid-table in the Championship. They've lost their kind of best player from last year as well. But, nothing's a foregone conclusion in these kind of matches. And yeah, we just got to apply ourselves properly. Hopefully the guys will be fired up following the result from last week there, and we'll be ready and raring to go. I wonder if there'll be any changes to make to get more minutes into anybody's legs or that. But I'm guessing that because, still kind of that part of the pre-season kind of way where you're trying to get that first 11 as many minutes as possible to get them to fitness, then it could be a strong lineup from the very start, which I think you do kind of have to do if you've got a chance to get into the quarterfinals of a cup. Got to take this opportunity as well as we can. Yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be a decent affair and hopefully one that we can come out the better end of.
Yeah, you mentioned there about team selection. Now, there was a couple of players that didn't make the squad on Saturday at Ibrox. Bruce Anderson had a nasty cut on his head. I don't believe his rib injury was as serious as maybe first thought after the Aberdeen game. I think from what David Martindale was saying, the cut's on the side of his head rather than on the front, and there was no kind of concussion involved in it. So Bruce, I would maybe expect to be back available. Scott Pittman took a heavy one in the ribs as well, and it's very unlike Pitts to miss any games over his Livingston career.
So I would, because of the pitch as well.
Yeah, Glenn, if you're listening, apparently rib injuries happen because of the pitch. But but you kind of talk about us needing to break Ayr United down. Is this where you try and shoehorn your more creative players into the team, the likes of Stephen Kelly, the likes of Dan Mackay? Joe Newbley as well can be very creative and open teams up. Do you try and maybe go with a slightly more attacking team in order to try and open Ayr United and try and get the tie, as I say, opened up and in our favour early doors?
Yeah, I think you definitely do need to. I think we'd end up going back to that kind of 5-2-2-1 kind of thing where like the two players were playing off of the centre forward. I think that would maybe be the best way for us to kind of go, having the two kind of exciting kind of passers of the ball, like Stephen Kelly behind, and then even Bradley or Mackay, to be fair, where you have a little bit of, somebody who's wanting to take a man on and be a little bit more exciting, kind of running behind and stuff like that. At the same time, though, I guess if you did play, Curtis Guthrie up next to Newbley, two strikers up top, if you're looking to exploit the flanks and get crosses into the box, then that would kind of work there as well. But I think you're probably looking at, Andrew Shinney and Jason Holt being that kind of midfield two again because of, how they like to get on the ball and are combative enough. And then it's just essentially who's going to play in front of them. If Bruce Anderson's fit, I would definitely have Bruce Anderson in that kind of area as well because, he was playing well. I think that the fact that he missed the Aberdeen game from the start was very harsh on him, to be fair. But I guess based off of game plans and stuff like that, then you can understand it. Whereas here, where the onus is on you and you're probably going to want to be creating chances and you want to get goals up in as soon as you can, I think Anderson's the man for that. But again, it all comes down to kind of availability in that regard. What about yourself? Any thoughts? Anything you would like to see in particular?
Well, I think Stephen Kelly, we mentioned him in the game at Ibrox, had a very good performance, I thought, despite the result. I would have Stephen Kelly in there. I think he's just got the ability to create something or produce a little moment of magic. So I would have him in there. It might be a really good opportunity to get somebody like Dan Mackay minutes and settled into the squad. So I wouldn't be against seeing him. Whether you try and shoehorn him as a wing back, I don't know. Maybe on that right hand side to offer just a little bit more attacking impetus on that side of the park. That would be quite harsh on Jamie Brandon, who I think's had a couple of really good outings in the Premiership there. But as I say, it's more looking at this as a cup tie that the onus will be on us. So maybe getting players with a little bit more of a creative spark in them on the pitch. But as I say, that's a wee bit of a headache. We were probably talking early doors in the season that we maybe didn't have those options in the attacking third. We do have a couple more of those options there. And I also believe Samson Law, who signed at the tail end of the week, will also be available for selection as well. And Davey bigged him up as a good sign-in in terms of the fact that he can play across probably about 6 positions across the park in midfield and in the forward areas. So there's another potential option in there for you. Whether he will actually come on and make his full debut and start the game, I would probably highly doubt that. But yeah, there's certainly options there for Davey, and probably more options given the fact that I would expect the likes of Scott Pittman and Bruce Anderson to be back available, certainly for the squad. So wee headache for the manager at the weekend there against Ayr United, and it is a repeat of his first game in charge, which was a last 16 tie against Ayr United in that COVID season. Davey marked 100 100 games in charge of the football club at the weekend at Ibrox there. So hopefully he can get the next century of games up and running with a victory and seeing us into the quarterfinals of the League Cup. But Angus, we'll go predictions. What are you going for?
I'll go for 2-0 to Livingston.
I'm copying you. I'm going 2-0 as well. I'm going 2-0. Hopefully we're right. Hopefully we see off the banana skin tie, which is against Ayr United at the weekend. But I would encourage anyone to get down. I'm sure the players would appreciate a big crowd and an important cup tie, because if we get through the quarterfinals and get a favourable draw, we're one game away from Hampden, which would be fantastic for the supporters. So yeah, I encourage everyone to get down for the Ayr United game and cheer on the guys. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again to all our listeners for tuning in, and let's hope for probably a slightly better week following the Lothian's finest football team.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Ambervale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the Premier Division. Livingston, Livingston, Livingston.